What it is, what to do. Welcome to Fresh Takens. We are hosting the Okotoks Dogs halfway season review as we are coming up on the WCBL All-Star Game, which is hosted at lovely Siemens Stadium. First off, we introduce the longtime voice of the Dogs, the one and only Gino. Gino, thank you for coming and talking here about the Dogs.
Looking forward to it. Never done an all-star game in my life, so this could be a barrel of laughs or a barrel of monkeys, whatever way you want to put it. So it's going to be wild.
And then the one, the only, he's got many hats, Peter Klein.
Literally and figuratively, yes.
Yes.
I am the owner of several chapeaus, and I also do a bunch of stuff. But yes, happy to be here.
I should have wore a hat. Like, I missed the memo to wear a red hat today, so sorry for doing my hair for YouTube, I guess.
Oh, it looks great. It looks great.
There's not much in the back, I'll tell you that right now.
So we come here. We're at the halfway point for the Dogs. Three of the core broadcasters for this team. Maybe we can add a few more broadcasters. Like you joke, we can get Sandra. We can get a few other people maybe to come on and join stuff. Or the Dogs. The Dogs. They finished in their last 10, going 6-4. Unfortunately, dropping their last one. Not a great last game for them, but they are the top of the WCBL. They're leading the Western Division right now at 33-12. And I'll start with you, Gino, just because you've probably called the most games out of the lot of us. Kind of just first your initial impressions about this team, with you kind of being the veteran of calling this group.
Well, I guess this would be year 3 for that, but who's counting? It feels like 6 with the pandemic. But to be honest, I'm not totally shocked that the Dogs are where they are right now because of Team Red and Team Black last year. I know me and Peter kind of joked a lot of times, like, are ready for another big Team Red and Team Black showdown last summer. And it was tough for guys like us, but for the building of the program that the Dogs have, they got to showcase their academy that I think pretty much, if you ask anybody, is 100% graduation to NCAA Division I or Division III ball wherever you go. And it continues to, and even in the in Canada as well. There's a lot of great talent. And of course, they've done some recruiting as well. You look at McCoy Pierce being one of them. He came out of the season flying with 4 home runs, I think, in the first, I want to say, like 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Like, he was absolutely on fire, and everybody else has just kind of followed suit. And the development has been off the charts, and there's no surprise there. They got all the veterans, they've got the good players, and they've got the great facility to help it out. So nothing shocks me. And I guess you want to call them Okotoks like Sylvan Lake is right behind them. And they stayed with them that game the other night, where it went 2 hours, where the Dogs held on for a 2-0 win. And it probably, if it wasn't for 2-3 great pitching matchups, it could have been a lot different game.
Peter, your thoughts so far in the halfway point?
Yeah, I mean, much like Gino, like you could kind of expect this coming into the season because of the experience that a lot of these guys gotten. And like Gino said, being able to showcase this, the Dogs Academy being named one of, I think they're top 3 for academies in North America. Like, they've done a phenomenal job with this program, and you can see it. You can see it in the development. I've mentioned it on a couple of broadcasts, to watch guys like Aiden Rose last year just get better as the season goes along. And then all of a sudden, by the end of it, it's, oh, wow, this guy's hitting 273 and he's in the lineup every day, when he just kind of seemed like he'd be the soft hitting second baseman replacement in the 7th inning. To see guys like that develop and get that time to develop, and now mixing them in with the great recruiting that they've done. And then again, to Gino's point, the facilities are incredible. They gave me a walkthrough of it last year. And as someone who grew up in a small town of 2,500, where we had one pitching machine with little yellow rubber balls firing at us.
Oh, those things hurt.
Oh yeah, they sure did, Gino. They sure did. Very predictable where they were flying too. But with the facilities that the Dogs have, like it is really second to none. And so to now see that playing out, it's been a lot of fun. And what was crazy, they start the year, what was it, winning 9 or 10 in a row. And then you look
which never happens with that team. They're always slow because all the recruits are late coming in. They're usually like 2-6 or 2-8, and then they explode. That did not happen.
Well, and that was the crazy thing, was that they got off to this good start, and then you're looking at the roster. It's like half of these guys aren't even here yet. Like you still had guys like McDowell who would come in late. Wilkinson came in late. Like you had these guys who were a little bit late to the party and just kind of supplementing all of it. My only worry is that, like, we knew they were good, they knew they were good, and they were miles ahead of everyone. And now Sylvan Lake has started to catch up. Was that switch kind of flipped off a little bit, or can they get it back going? I think they probably can, but I think it's going to be a pretty fun race for first the rest of the way.
Yeah, definitely. Like you guys, you hit on there, Peter. It's my first year with the Dawgs, so my first introduction there and getting to call baseball, and it was everything I wanted it to be. Getting to be at the park and it's just a different vibe than what you've had to do, call hockey, or, for me, I'm called basketball for 10 years, called volleyball, called track, called football, but there's just a different communal type of feeling you feel everyone at Siemens Stadium when you're there, when the window's open. When the window's closed, maybe
they're both open now, so we're fine.
They're both open now, so that's a little inside baseball, quote unquote, for us here. But yeah, they started off great, and then you mentioned they had some losses, but just an unwieldy road trip. Just the way they had to travel, right? I think they went from like Lethbridge, then to Regina, then to Swift Current. It was just an unforgiving travel road trip for them to start the season. And they were able to break 500 on that road trip, when I think a lot of teams, and you mentioned guys like McDowell on that road trip, it was not a very nice road trip for them to start the season on, but they at least broke 500 on it.
No, it's something that you're gonna try and offload your long road trip, which would also, I think they even went to Fort McMurray on that trip, if I'm not mistaken. They went Sylvan Lake, Fort Mac, and down through Saskatchewan. The Fort McMurray trips, this guy's a little bit of a veteran of those ones. They're terrible. They're absolutely awful. But I think just like the whole grind that is the WCBL season now, and it's really kind of been turned on its edge here the last, obviously couple years, but with no Medicine Hat now in that division, it really I thought Medicine Hat might roll over the East. And that's kind of where we'll maybe segue a little bit here to talk about the East just for a second. When Moose Jaw came into town, I was impressed. Like, it was small ball, it was double, single, and they did hit one home run in the second game, but they swept the Dawgs at Siemens Stadium, which no other team has done this year. And it's not an easy road trip. It doesn't matter if Weyburn's got 7 wins, you still got to play in Weyburn. I've been to Weyburn; it's a nice place in the summertime. So maybe not the ballpark, I've never been to it, but one day maybe I'll cross that off the list. But it's not a Swift Current's always a very steady team. When whether they were the Swift Current Indians or now the 57s, are always a competitive team, and you usually see those really good competitive teams on a Canada Day game in Okotoks. So you want to showcase the other side of the league, and it's just going to be a fun weekend. I've never seen an all-star game before at that level of baseball. So a real good chance. Of course, with the three of us splitting a summer of baseball, we don't get to see everybody. So we all have different ins and outs of who should we watch for this coming weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because we were talking about it before. I haven't seen any of the East teams. Just the way the schedule is broke. It's been nothing but West for me so far. So the most I can add on any discussion about the East is I've played in the Moose Jaw ballpark before, and the sun's really annoying for a first baseman at a certain time of night. That's the extent of the expertise I can provide. Is that the first baseman best be bringing sunglasses? That's the extent of it. But I'm excited to see what the rest of the league has to offer, because, like you said, like Moose Jaw 28-15. Like, there's obviously good players throughout this league. So excited to get a chance to see them in a few days here.
And we'll go over some of the all-stars, I guess, since we're on the all-star side of things. A few guys one particular that we were surprised that wasn't an all-star, specifically in the, one player in Cazorla, the game that Peter and I did have together at the beginning of the season. We were just in amaze that Cazorla, every single time he was up to bat, he always just seemed to be the game breaker for them. When they needed a big hit, he got a big hit. When they needed a steal, they got a steal. Defensively, pretty good as well. So he just seems like a 5-tool player for this team. So I'm a little bit surprised that Cazorla didn't get that all. Not a lot of Dogs, and we'll talk about all the Dogs that did get it. I was surprised, and I think you were too, Gino, that Cazorla wasn't one of those guys in the all-star roster with how great he's been this year.
Well, and I think even on top of that, Josh, it's the fact that Cazorla, I believe his batting average right now, he's hitting. I think he's 360. He's fourth in batting right now,
Yeah.
and yet we don't see the top three guys that aren't in this. But I know there's a selection process of how this All Star game goes. But Cazorla, to me, especially last year, he was so fun to watch, and he was young and from the Dawgs Academy. He's from Colombia. He's from Caracas, Venezuela originally, but makes home in Okotoks and spends a lot of time at the training facilities at the Duvernay Fieldhouse. And every time he comes up, his walk-up music, where it has like that whistle at the beginning, it's just like silence, something great is about to happen. And he's just been fun to watch. And I don't know what his intro music is called, but I called two of his home runs. I called it Fuego number 3 and Fuego number 4. So this goes for a lot of guys that are on this roster for the All-Star game. Like, it's a great showcase, and I'm glad to see a Jordan Bach as a really good catcher for the Fort McMurray Giants. I really liked watching Fort McMurray in the last season series. They were at Siemens Stadium with my good buddy Ray Brown coaching them. Reese Calvin, so fun to watch. Charlie Towers at short. That's a very strong team and a good hitting team, and they'll be dangerous to watch. They're in that spot right now. They're flirting with the Bulls for third, and Edmonton's trying to get in. You look at Jordan Moffat is in the lineup. Like, I saw him as a reliever. He just mowed guys over. He kind of had the Matt Wilkinson effect a little bit into late innings,
Right.
but it kind of reminded me on that Canada Day game. I can't remember who started for Edmonton, but Jordan Moffat finished the games. It was kind of like the Kurt Schilling, Randy Johnson sort of, all right, I'll do 5, you pitch 4, and we'll win this ball game. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Peter. No, go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say, just to piggyback off of that, other guys who were kind of excited to see. I just saw him in my last one, but Ethan He from Sylvan Lake. The dude is a vacuum at second. I may as well have just had a number 4 stamp for my scorebook because it was L4, 4-3, 4-3 put out. Just like over and over and over again. This guy was a vacuum there and getting it done with the bat as well. I believe his batting average is over 300. So he is a guy who I'm excited to kind of get this showcase. But just to add my 2 cents to the Cazorla conversation, I honestly, like, I saw, okay, All-Stars announced. In my notes, I typed All-Star by Cazorla just to get ahead of it. And I caught myself and had to delete it the other day. I was like, I don't think he's actually on there. Because like he just, I think it was, and Gino, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think it was Glenn Gullitson who he was the first that I heard say in the fabric of the game. And it feels like Cazorla's in the fabric of the game all the time when you watch him play.
Fabric of the game,
right? Like, it's just but it works, right? Like, just every time there's a ball game, he does something that impacts winning, whether it's something defensive, whether it's something on the bases, either stealing a base or forcing a pitcher into a balk, or just getting from first to third on a single where a lot of guys wouldn't get that. And then, like you said as well, just mashing with the bat. I was very surprised. And again, that's maybe it's a bit of carryover from last year because he was so good a year ago as well. But I was very, very, very surprised he was not on the list.
I'll maybe just punch in one thing. Maybe the bigger exception that's not an Okotoks dog is how Tyler McWillie is not on this roster. And I don't know if he's he's the Shohei Ohtani of the WCBL. Hits, pitches, and does it all. And I remember he pitched and then hit in a game last year that I watched. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen because I don't get to see Shohei, obviously, on a regular basis. But that maybe is the only other exception. Like, I'm going to have to think on that one a little bit as we get closer to All-Star weekend.
Mm-hmm.
One player that I'm excited to see again, and I think defensively and speed, guy from the prospects, and I always butcher his name, so forgive me, but Fear Steak. I think you got to see him a lot in Canada Day too there, Gino. He's second right now in WCBL and hitting. Great base runner, great defensively for them. There's a few games I've watched against the prospects where he's kept them in with his defense and with his base running ability. So, and obviously he's been a pretty clutch hitter for them as well. So good to see him there. But even Cazorla, you mentioned, just looking now, like Cazorla is 4th in WCBL in batting right now at 360 right now. So again, it's kind of weird to not have him. And again, credit to you, Peter, fabric of the game. such a perfect sense of it because he's just there. He's just Mr. Clutch for them. And as we get closer to the playoffs for the Dogs, the big bat of McCoy Pierce, and he's hitting 358, maybe my favorite batting up music. The first time I heard that, and I heard the hit 'em high from Space Jam, and it was like, okay,
super weird one to me.
Oh no, I love it.
Do you?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it gets me more fired up. Like, not that I have to get super fired up, but like it gets me more fired up. Just like I want to just like get up and start doing jumping jacks or something when it comes on. Like, it's so good.
Well, and Pierce was hurt for 2 or 3 weeks, or for a couple of weeks when he was on his tear, and he's just getting back. He's still pretty solid at first. And he was really good defense. Well, the whole defense was good in that 2-0 game, obviously. Ricardo Sanchez, maybe another one that we haven't seen that maybe could have cracked this lineup, but Brunner, McFarland, Jacob Burrow behind home plate. Brendan Luther's been the everyday shortstop for this team and still as steady Eddie as ever. And Josh's favorite player by far, Micah McDowell, just patrolling center field like there's no tomorrow. Man. Like, what did he steal? 6 bases the one day you called the game or something like that?
4. So he had 4. He had 4 stolen bases. He got hit twice in that game. He walked. He got a double. He got an RBI double in that game. He's one of the most electrifying. I said this in a tweet, because I've had the privilege of calling basketball for the State Trojans and the Dinos the last handful of years. So I've seen a lot of great athletes now that are in the Canadian Basketball League. And, you guys have got to see some great hockey players, Cal McCarr for you, Gino. So I'm sure he's not at that level, but he's maybe the greatest athlete I've had the privilege of calling. Matthew Trevelini is probably the second greatest athlete who's done great things in track. Getting to do stuff with him, seeing it State and breaking a bunch of Alberta records. But McDowell, and it's crazy because you look at his Oregon State stats, right? And it's just like, okay, yeah, like he had four steals in the season at an NC2A level. And then he comes here and it's like, this is just a different little sandbox for McDowell all of a sudden, the way that he can base run here.
No kidding. I think he was a late ad last year. I can't remember if I think he played for Team Black last year. As my prep is probably not up to snuff today, apparently, but he was like, okay, this is just a really, like you said, he looks like a really good athlete. It's like if I picked him to be on my basketball team, he can probably be a starter by the end of the season if I showed him how to play, or same with volleyball, any sport. And that's what makes baseball so great. There is a lot of 2-sport athletes when you come to baseball, even though if you're at the academy, your one sport is baseball. But I couldn't agree more with you of what Micah McDowell has done. And Noah Geekie, I haven't seen him pitch this year. He's just been a fielder, which was the absolute opposite last year. Yeah, he warmed up my game. He was going to come in for Matt Wilkinson if he blew the save, I think. But I was like, well, that's not going to happen. So that's why he took a bullpen session and he's been in the field. So it's a really diverse group, and probably minus maybe the 2007, the 2008 Dawgs teams, probably the most talent as a whole this group has.
I feel that. Well, and you mentioned Geekie. I mean, it was a rough outing. I think he gave up 5 runs. You could see the stuff, like Jermaine was like, you can see the stuff here, and he has a nice breaking ball and a decent fastball, but they were just all over him in that game. And he ended up staying in the game batting for 2 more times around, which he's not supposed to, and literally broke point streak because he wasn't supposed to be back in. So point streak completely broke because they're like, why is the pitcher doing this? This isn't supposed to be happening. So I had to go the old school. That was my first time to really, because I had been relying on Point Streak Live to kind of follow along with some of the stats. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm counting baseball the old school way here. But I mean, you talked about him, just a great talented athlete. His brother obviously just now plays for the Coyotes. He was a lottery pick. So, and I believe his brother was down for that Canada Day game that you got to be at.
Yeah. Well, and Morgan Geekie plays for the Seattle Kraken, so there's some athletic prowess in that.
Yeah, family. It's a little talented. Yeah, and
not bad.
You can tell that Connor has some talent. We'll see where he comes during. We just had 2 Dogs drafted in the MLB draft, which is super exciting to see. And I'm guessing you had the privilege of getting to see both those gentlemen, Gino.
I did. It's a great story for Jacob Melton because it was actually on Calgary radio the other day where manager Mitch Schmidt talked about him. He went 2nd round, and that's pretty high prowess where you're heading to in baseball. And apparently he was terrible his first year with the Dogs, like absolutely garbage. Well, I don't want to say garbage, but I'm just paraphrasing what Mitch had said. And they benched him for a while. Then he finally kind of got into a groove and was part of that championship team in 2019 that beat Regina in a great series and was a big contributor to that. And to me, Gavin Logan is a catcher. He looks the part. He plays the part. The way his stance and that extra little stretch on the outside corner framing, that guy's a baller. And getting him in the 9th round to Arizona, I'm really excited for that. I've kind of been an adopted Arizona Diamondbacks fan. And of course, everybody will kind of draw their eyebrow because I am a Red Sox fan first, but actually going to Chase Field, like I could play ball. Like if I had no worries in the world, I'd play in Arizona the rest of my life. Like that's why maybe just the sidebar of why doesn't a hockey team work here? Because I would love it here. So, well, I'll just leave it at that. But Gavin to me just looks the part of like a strong catcher, that Buster Posey, and just maybe a little Ivan Rodriguez, like aggressive at the plate catching. He's got all the tools there.
And yeah, there, Peter.
I didn't get the chance to see him, but you think about the Dawgs Academy and you talk about like the progression from year 1 to year 2, year 3. There's another example of it where the first year, okay, we got some work to do, but like you go through there and it's okay. Well, if you need to work on this, then we have this area here. If you need to work on this, then we got this guy there. Like it really is an incredible facility for player development. And if you are a young player, like I don't know why you wouldn't want to go there. With all due respect to any of the, I'm not saying don't go to Sylvan Lake or anything like that. Like I'm sure everything's right there as well, but from a baseball playing standpoint, it really is the perfect setup there, and you can see some of the development that a lot of these players have gone through.
Absolutely. You're talking about catchers. Jacob Morrow, he's an all-star. Super impressed with him. Just a clutch bat, but defensively, he guards the plate so well. Like there's not many wild pitch. I think we've seen one wild pitch get by him, but for the most part, he guards his plate really, really, really well.
Mm-hmm. His arm too is phenomenal. Like the last game I had, there was first and second, nobody out, and he got the guy off second leaning too far, and then he got the guy off first leaning too far, and all of a sudden bases are empty and there's 2 away. Like his arm is a difference maker back there. And because base stealing has kind of gone out of the big league game now, you don't think of that from a catching standpoint. But again, talking about someone, Pudge Rodriguez, who would change game plans, I think Morrow is kind of along those similar lines where that arm is a factor and you have to be aware of that. And especially at Siemens Stadium, it is a big ballpark, though the ball does not necessarily fly out of there. Base running, you have to mind your P's and Q's, and it kind of has to be station to station, try to get your advances where you can. And so to be able to force teams to kind of throw away the base running angle is a big factor, I think.
It took everything that I was going to say, Peter. Like, and I've seen a lot of Jacob Morrow this year. I haven't seen as much from I'm losing everybody's name.
JJ?
They have so many. They have so many catchers too. They have Kobe Levitz, who was on their roster last year. He's kind of been on the back burner with the academy. He's a younger catcher, and they have abundance. They have just an abundance of everything.
Yeah.
You need a catcher. I've got 3. What do you need? And so versatile that lineup is, and it's going to be hard it's going to come down. And I think we always know this answer, Josh and Peter, when kids start going back to school in August, they have pushed the league back to finish a little bit sooner. So all of your guys are still kicking around before they head back to school. How many are still going to be sticking around by the time the playoffs roll on? Because those are best of 3. So for pitchers, you need probably 3 games out of 2 or 3 of your top pitchers to have a chance to win.
Well, and that was, and it's why I still have like a bit of pause this year, because last year it felt like it was Dawgs Black's world and everyone else was just living in it. And then you look at the lineups from the playoff games, it's like, I've called half this team's games and I don't know who some of these guys are. But it's just a bunch of the big guys have gone back. So that depth is going to be key. And guys like God damn, now Gino's got me rattled. Caleb Evans and guys like that. Guys like Aiden Rose again, who I brought up before, who are hanging around for a little bit longer before heading back to school. I guess Aiden probably wouldn't be, but guys like that are going to be very important for you as you go into the final few weeks of this season now.
It's hard to believe we're
And I
already
think
there.
what they've done with their bullpen too, I think is a case for that, right? We don't see the starters. I haven't at least seen a starter go more than maybe 6. They normally go to that 6, and then it's an inning. It's a pitcher an inning to really get those reps in as they get ready for the playoff time. But I have not, even if a pitcher is rolling, I've seen a few guys come in. I think the last game we saw, I think it was Brody Fruno or David Chase. I think it was David Chase came in, boom, 3 strikeouts in a row. I'm like, okay, well, surely they're going to bring him back in. No, save him in the pen, save the arm, bring out another guy. That typically has been the role that they have gone out of the pen so far this year.
Well, and the big thing there's some very direct instructions from NCAA coaches. My pitcher does not pitch more than this many pitches or go this many innings. There is a very concrete, do not deal with this. But Bobby Vath did go 8 innings on Tuesday night before Wilkinson took over. And I looked at pitch count. I'm like, okay, kind of kicking around there. So maybe they got a little bit leeway here. But Bobby Vath may not play for a game for the Dogs because he might miss a start just because. And you're probably going to have the odd game of – you're probably going to have a Noah Geeky spot start here somewhere just to kind of get through that stretch. But they're very direct on what my players are doing. And I think the big one out of that is actually Matt Wilkinson, because first game he played, I was like, this kid's going to go 7 innings in and strike out 20. Though he got rocked in 5, and he did start winning again after, but Mitch Schmidt and Dave Robb and crew all make the decision to put him into the bullpen, and now has 3 saves, and he's 3 for 3 in the save department. No doubt about that. And that's going to be something too. Like, as you mentioned, might be able to use Matt Wilkinson for some long relief.
Mm-hmm. I love what they're doing with the bullpen right now, where it's kind of Kansas City Royals-esque when the Blue Jays were faltering against the Royals back in 15, where you can kind of make it a 7-inning ball game because McFarland was lights out in the bullpen. Now you have him coming in the 7th, which I think is illegal in some countries. And then Wilkinson in for the 8th and 9th is ridiculous. So now if a starter goes 6 strong, you're going to make a comeback against those cats. It's going to be tough. So that they can put that pressure on early. They're so good at getting out of the, again, a Lewism, but starting on time. They're very good at doing that, and then shutting things down on the back end. Like it's a very good setup. And even if it is brought on by college coaches saying, hey, you don't overthrow them because I have to make that kid pitch 225 outs or 225 pitches over 3 days on a weekend in Omaha, Nebraska. How dare you? But that's another rant for another day.
I love it. It reminds me of Mariano Rivera in the 90s in the playoffs, where Tom Gordon would go before him in the 7th, and then he would go 2 if Joe Torre really just wanted to be an ass about it and say, yeah, all right, you get 6 strikeouts or 4 strikeouts, and thanks for coming. So it has that sort of familiarity, but I don't want to pump these kids' egos up too much, even though I watched Matt Wilkinson come in. This was the year that they won. He was a smaller version of himself right now. And he came in the 7th inning of a random playoff game and struck out the side. I was like, who the hell is this guy? Like, where did he?
Gino's like, I think I'm in love.
Well, no, stop it. But he was still in high school too. I was like, good Lord, like you're throwing 88 and like you're 16, 17 years old. Like, I think he might have a future. Kind of reminds me of Eric Gagne or like a CC Sabathia approach with the left-hander, just the build that they have. That was the first. I'm like, yes, do that. Yeah. Like, if you aspire to be those two, you might make some money too.
I thought Jabba Chamberlain, because the same person about the when we saw him. That's the first thing I brought up to Peter.
It's funny that you mentioned Jabba Chamberlain, not for the Matt Wilkinson comparison, but the other night, maybe a week ago, there was one pitcher for an opposing team, and maybe it was Wayburn. The guy kept like brushing his face, there's a big swarm of mosquitoes like kind of flew in. And I was going back to that one playoff game. I can't remember who were they played.
Cleveland. It
with
was
like
in
all
Cleveland.
those, they were crawling all over Jabba Chamberlain's sweaty neck. And I don't know what it was, but I just had to bring up that for bugs and Jabba Chamberlain. That's my biggest memory of Jabba Chamberlain.
Oh man! Now, anytime Wilkinson comes out, now I'm going to say that they're sticking to the Wilkinson rules, like they had the Jabba rules back in the day.
The Jabba rules, yeah. I mean, so Bruner right now, he leads the WCBL in wins right now. He's an all-star, so he's obviously going to be their number one ace as we head towards the playoffs. Who else do you kind of think that will be the second that they'll go with as playoffs come up? That okay, we know that this guy can give us a head full of good innings, that he can be second after Bruner heading into playoffs.
Ooh, it's tough because you look at how the bullpen's kind of operated. I would think your number two is Bobby Vath, but remember Quinn Toshnick is around and Julian Tomachko is kind of kicking around. They are, they have a lot of options. Tomachko being who he is, I believe is hurt right now. I think he's on the reserve roster. He may not be back with the team right now. Graham Seltzer's another one. Like they have the options to kind of go deeper into their bullpen, and David Case can go long relief too if they want to go that direction. Baltus had a rough go against Lethbridge yesterday, but just the way I watched Bobby Vath's last two games, or how he responded after getting lit up by Fort McMurray in a 7-2 loss with a game that he won 2-0 against. So like he's your number two, and just depending how your innings are going, you might go Wilkinson in a game 3 for a situation like that. You might start him that way. I could totally see it, but those would be my 3 right off the hop without even thinking about it.
Yeah, I think Wilkinson would be interesting. Like you're down 1-0. As like, hey, we kind of need this one. Maybe you do that, but then for a game 3, I don't know. I haven't seen enough of Vath. My first thought was Tomachko. I've seen more of him, but just looking at the numbers, Vath would certainly be on there. But like you guys have said, they have some options. If they wanted, you wouldn't see this necessarily in a best of 3, but if you needed to do a bullpen game, you absolutely could. Like this just, again, like you said, there's options everywhere. There's extra outfielders, there's extra infielders, there's extra catchers. I'm sure there's extra coaches just hanging around that we don't know about.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, they have 4 broadcasters. Like there's just, they have depth everywhere.
Okay, we're not the Sherwood Park Crusaders had like 6 there one year.
So no, but I would be in agreement then that Vath would probably be the guy. I haven't seen enough of him. But I think I would be very interested to see what the utilization of Wilkinson is just throughout, right? Because we see in the big leagues all the time, bullpen management changes in the playoffs. The closer all of a sudden comes in the 5th, 6th inning. If it's a 10 situation, how willing would the Dogs be to do that in those situations, given the amount of talent they have everywhere else?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I kind of wanted to talk about the start of the lineup here, just 2 players in particular, Brandon Luther and Tucker Zadunich. Luther has been terrific at leadoff. I think he's been great. Zadunich is such an interesting player to watch. He had that streak there where it just seems like he was wearing golden sombreros, but then he just comes in and gets big hits all the time. I was like, I cannot, but great defensively. It's like I cannot make heads or tails of Tucker Zadunich because he does have a nice batting average, but then there's these games where he's wearing a golden sombrero.
The pride of High River, Alberta's Tucker Zadunich, of course. No, I loved watching him in Dogs Red last year. It's funny. Here's the big stat line difference. His average has gone down, but he had 5 home runs last year. He has none this year.
I know, it's crazy.
It doesn't make a whole lick of sense, to be honest, but he could be that guy that is saving for the playoffs. This is just like the Paul O'Neills of the world, right? Like that's what that was my first thing. Like, if this kid gets to the playoffs and gets the rhythm, Mitch Schmidt is going to be licking his lips and say, I'm just going to throw Tucker out. And he's got the 2 random, like he reminds me of Paul O'Neill. That is like my one.
It's a great comparison. It's a great comparison, Gino.
Like I'm sure the Gatorade boxes in or Gatorade cases in the dugout are thrilled with that.
No, I think that's a weird, and it's just so strange how his game he's technically got more hits this year. They're just not extra big. He's got 45 hits compared to 38 at this point in 33 games last year. So, and he's played 41. So he's creeping above average. He just hasn't had those extra base hits this year.
And what's weird is like he had 17 with Reinhardt this year. Like it's not like it was something throughout the year. Like at university, he was mashing as well. And now here, and like his RBI totals are up. And I had him the other night against Sylvan Lake, where just like, it's one of those ones where sometimes when you're on a roll, like the ball just seems to find you. It just seemed like he was on a roll, and every time he came up was a big moment, and he delivered in all of those. And he is another one who I thought last year really benefited from the two teams and that experience, because I thought by the end of the year, he was probably the best player on Dawgs Red. And I think just having that, like, okay, guys, hop on, let's go, I think is beneficial for someone. And he obviously built off of it this year with Reinhardt. And now with this Dawgs team, where he is, I don't want to say in a complimentary role because he's still at the top of the order, but it doesn't have to just be him, I think has benefited him greatly.
Which kind of goes back to my Alejandro Cazorla. He's batting first. He's batting fourth. He's batting eighth. He's batting. You just hit ninth tonight, and you'll surprise everybody. So I love that dynamic that they have. Like that's the coolest part.
Another linchpin in that lineup is Sanchez, who I've seen have a few really good clutch games, and has been maybe the second best base runner on that team next to McDowell, I'd say.
I put Cazorla a little ahead of Sanchez.
Yeah, that's true.
I do love his patience. I remember again my Lewis.
Yes, I remember. What it is.
I remember watching him back in 2019 in the playoffs. He was one of those kids like, oh crap, everybody's gone from this roster, because there was Eddie Sanchez's older brother, but little brother Ricardo got to pinch hit in the playoffs. And if I'm not mistaken, either got the game tying run or the eventual game winning run in that championship game against Regina in 2019. He's a very patient batter as well. He's always, at least the last two games I watch him, has at least one quality at bat per game. So he's got, again, all the tools that Big Brother has, and another Dawgs Academy graduate, I may add as well.
The thing I like about Sanchez is sorry to interrupt again, John.
Oh, no, go ahead, Peter.
The thing I like about Sanchez is the bat speed, and that I think allows you to be a bit more patient, because you can allow for that. Now we're talking about like heartbeats of time, but you can allow that ball to come in for just a split second longer, and okay, yeah, I can swing at this one, and you can get there. It's very kind of for I was gonna say older Blue Jays fans. It's not that long ago, but it's kind of peak Aaron Hill-esque, where you can just wait on it, and then the swing, boom, the bat is just like gets the barrel of the bat through the zone so quickly, like, and that allows him, he can wait a little bit longer on pitches to see if it's a ball or a strike, see what the movement is. And he's good going the other way. He's got a quick bat, so he can pull a lot of pitches that you wouldn't necessarily think he can pull, and he can wait on those. And that gets you to like twice as many walks as strikeouts, which he has this year. And then, like you said, he's a problem on the bases. So I'm with you guys. I really like his game a lot.
Well, yeah, his patience is one of the best I've seen, because he will take walks. I think he's the leader in the Dawgs on walks, if not up there. And by the way, if we're going to a Gen Z audience right now, it is over their head with Aaron Hale and Paul O'Neill.
I wanted to say,
Chamberlain.
How did we go from Alejandro Cazorla to Paul O'Neill to Aaron Hill all in like a span of 5-10 minutes?
I think the only reference anyone will get was Gino with the CC Sabathia, and that's only because he has a podcast right now. Like that's probably
he has a podcast.
Yeah,
he's on Bill Simmons' network.
Yeah, he's on the Ringer.
Oh, I need to. I don't podcast enough. I listen to Couch Potato and Fresh Take, but
there you go. Of course.
I really don't. What am I missing right now?
CC Sabathia apparently.
And I love CC Sabathia. He played for the Yankees, so that shows you how much I liked him.
I loved the old the score when they had the radio station, and Cam Stewart always called him carbs and calories Sabathia. That has stuck with me for and then he lost some weight, and so they called him celeries and carrots Sabathia for a bit.
Oh, I remember when he played for Cleveland. I know we're supposed to be talking about the WCBL, but when he was Cleveland Sabathia, that was the only thing stopping the Boston Red Sox from moving on was, oh crap, we got to face him for the third time in the series. And
he had the year with the Brewers too that was locked down, right?
Yeah, he pitched every third game. Like he was on 3 days rest the entire second half of the baseball season to get that team into the playoffs.
Didn't he hit like a couple home runs too?
Yep.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, love me some CC Sabathia. Love me some.
Yeah, I think the podcast is called, I guess, cheap plug for the ringer here. I think it's called CCBC, and it's CC, and I believe one of the voice of the Yankees that does the show as well. Yeah, so as a Red Sox fan, maybe not as enjoyable for you right now.
Hey, like I said, it's the off year for the Red Sox, but somehow they're somehow in playoff contention this year.
Yeah, don't worry. Peter and I know the same thing with our Blue Jays.
Yeah, it's an off year. Like they win the championship and then they're supposed to fail, and now we're in that cycle again, right? So
it is R2C2 with CC Sabathia and Ryan Rucco.
Yeah, okay. Ryan Rucco. Yeah, it's a good show. It's a good show.
Get us back on track, Josh.
Yeah, I will. So we come back. There's going to be, I think, about 5-6 games left in the season, and then, like you said, Gino, the NCAA season will, at least the teams will want their players back and everything like that. But I think the playoffs only go to like the 14th. Like these playoffs, they're going to go by fast.
There'll be players this season or in the playoffs, if they, like, especially pitchers, if they don't have to pitch anymore, they won't be there for a celebration. They'll be,
wow.
Let's say they pitch at 7:00 at Siemens Stadium on a Wednesday night. They're going to be on the red eye to California or Lynn Benton Community College Thursday morning at 2 a.m.
Or Okanagan and Oregon State, because that seems where 75% of the Dogs are from.
Well, there's a lot of connections there with Mitch Schmidt and Andy Peterson and Joe Sargent and Johnny Urcandia as well for recruiting. So Lynn Benton is a big one always. That's because Andy Peterson's there as the manager. So
it's been a fun season for this Dogs team, and I guess I'll hit you on this, Gino, and then go to Peter. But you've had the senior here of getting the call of this team, and you've seen championships and everything like that. You guys talked about the 2 academy teams and where everything was last year. Now we have all of one. They're leading. You mentioned Sylvan Lake's coming on. Moose Jaw is great. I think this Edmonton team really seems to be getting their stuff together as well. We're seeing a lot of those teams gel, right? It's almost hard to kind of judge some of the teams in the WCBL in the first 10 games because, like we mentioned at the start, the roster's not fully complete. As we come down the stretch here, where are you feeling, Gino, for this Dogs team heading into the playoffs?
Oh man, it's gonna be a tough first round. I don't know who you want in the first round.
Yeah,
I'll go back to just some historical parts with the Dogs a little bit. When the Edmonton Prospects were coached by Ray Brown, they gave the Dogs team headaches every time in the playoffs and beat them a couple series in a row with Ray at the controls. So if Fort McMurray gets into the 4 seed, that's going 3. That to me, that is firmly going to go 3 games, just the way Fort McMurray has been played
right now.
And that's the way it would be. And then you'd have Lethbridge and Sylvan Lake in the 2-3 with Edmonton, 2 games back, if I'm not mistaken.
Edmonton and Brooks.
I said Edmonton was rolling.
And Brooks is not.
Edmonton.
They're not horrible. Like, remember, their hockey teams have always been good, but their baseball teams are getting better. Like, you look at this weekend, you're going to see Matt Wolf, who's one of the leaders in home runs. I think there's
Matt
a
Wolf
lot
is
of
pleasure to watch.
Yes, I haven't seen him much this year.
He's great. I really enjoyed watching him.
The games I watched Brooks this year was opening weekend where the Dogs won 16-0 and 11-2. So
I saw 18-2.
Yeah, that's right. But the West Division's so good, and I thought Medicine Hat would be a hair better in the East because they were out of the West, and they were the Dogs' biggest rival for years, along with Lethbridge.
Right.
But I think that's Moose Jaw's division to lose, and they'll be in the WCBL final. Like I'm firmly, you could call it a guarantee. I'm calling my shot there that whoever wins the West is playing Moose Jaw in the WCBL final.
Yeah, I would
winning streak, Peter.
I would tend to agree with that. And like, that Brooks team, because I do the player prep and then I look at like standings and all that stuff after. And I did the player prep and then I looked at the standings. So I was like, wait a minute. Those don't match up. These are not compute. Brooks is like 5 guys hitting over 300. Now they can't pitch a lick, but they got like 5 guys hitting over 300. They have a couple of pitchers who are pretty good. I'm exaggerating for humor purposes. But like, I looked at that team and I was like, how are they? This is not the statistical makeup of a last place team. So I get we're kind of running out of runway here to really take off, but that you guys are right. Like you normally you finish first, like, okay, good matchup, and then it's going to be difficult in the second round. It's going to be difficult in the second round with either a Lethbridge or a Sylvan Lake, but it is not going to be a cakewalk in that first round, whether it is Fort McMurray, Edmonton, or Brooks. That there are problems on all three of those teams.
Well, I think the Brooks thing actually, Pete, if I'm not, and I haven't been to Elks Field, I think it's a smaller field. So the hitting is up when you're at home, which is great. How dare you play well at home? Because that's your job.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of a factor there that's maybe one of the smaller parks in the league. And I wanted to bring this up before we kind of disappeared. Was you look at the East Division home run derby with Nate Mensick, he's got 9 home runs. And then Nate Bach from Regina was 6. Also Nolan Machabrota from Weyburn, they've got 6. I feel like those diamonds are obviously get a little bit shorter in distance, because when you come out west, McCoy Pierce has got 5. Matt Wolf has 6, but he's in Brooks. And I have Caden Zeroni with 4, who's supposed to be the other participant from Sylvan Lake. He's got 4. So is there a little bit of an issue there with pitching and length of field? So I'm curious how things are going to go when it comes to the home run derby on the weekend.
Yeah, because it's a big ballpark.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I got robbed of a call. So this is kind of a little bit broadcast booth side. I think it was Tucker. Actually, I thought he had his first home run, right? And so that sun can get in your eyes even as a broadcaster. I'm like, and it's back. And the defense did the thing where they kind of, crash into the wall, right? And I had my MLB The Show brain on, where, when those AI guys, they go into the wall, it's like, well, that ball's gone, right? And it touches the borderline side of the fence and just falls right out. And I'm just like, it's gone! It's the fence. And I was like, jeez.
Oh yeah. Well, you almost think because of the age of these players when they're making I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, they got it. They caught it. Like, well done.
Yeah.
We forget the caliber that they are. And I haven't seen a home run robbed yet in my time in the WCBL where somebody leaps the fence. That's probably the last thing on my list for that. I have seen one baseball touch the Petro-Canada parking lot a couple of years ago. Jacob Melton did that.
There you go. That's why he's in the second round.
Yeah. That's what I believe it was Jacob Melton.
All right. So just before we get out of here, I figured I'd here are your dogs that are going to the All-Star game. They have 6 dogs going. So we talked about their ace and Graham Bruner. He's there. Also Ryan McFarland. He is an All-Star. On the bat side, you have the terrific Jacob Morrow is going, Brandon Luther, McCoy Pierce, the super talented does it both ways, Noah Geeky, and the speedster Micah McDowell going. Obviously, we talked about how we'd like Cazorla there, but terrific lineup of dogs that will be representing at the WCBL All-Star Game, which will be live on Home Team Live. And we'll be live from Siemens Stadium, and tickets are still on sale. The ballpark opens at 4 p.m. and the home run derby starts at 5 o'clock. Game starts at 7:05 and fireworks afterwards. Did I get everything in my promo ability there?
I think you nailed it. That was a one take promo.
Yeah. Before we get out of here, anything left to add, Peter?
No, I think we covered it. I'm excited to see all this talent. Like I said, we only kind of parachute in for a game or two and then parachute back out. So it's going to be fun to see all these guys on the field at the same time. And this is going to be a really, really fun showcase, I think, for the league.
Absolutely.
Yeah, ditto. I'm just curious to see how players react to an all-star game. Will they be fully engaged? It's going to be just a weekend at Bernie's sort of situation. I think you'll see this Dawgs team at home. I think you'll get almost a sellout for Siemens Stadium for this, because there's fireworks, and Southern Alberta. It's just a fascination that I need to see these, so I need to go to the ballpark. And I firmly think there's so many players in this All-Star game. Are you going to see all the Dawgs on at the same time? Probably not, but the starting lineups, that's what I want to know. Who starts and who is on the bench first? Because there's going to be there might be some mutiny on the bench for trying to get in or trying to get somebody out of the game. But let's just hope everybody has fun, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So once again, if you want to hear the game, if you try to get to the park, there's still limited tickets left to get to the Dogs. Check it out, a beautiful Siemens Stadium. Even if you're, from one of these visiting teams, or you're from Calgary up the road, or Cochrane, or anywhere along the borderline here in the Calgary's vicinity, go check it out. And if not, you'll hear all of us at one point on Home Team Live during that game. It's going to be an all-star broadcast. And thanks everyone. Thanks to Peter and the Dawgs broadcast legend and Gino. And until you've been doing it long enough, it goes to that level.
Legend. Yeah. All right. Let's leave it at that.
Modest. And until next time, everyone, cheers and enjoy the games, people.